Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Alluring Bead Boutique on Skillshare. My name's Katrina, and I am the sole proprietor, owner, operator, designer, and jewelry maker for my business. Today's class is going to be on this lovely Desert Blooms bracelet. This is actually the second version of the bracelet, and it's also the one I'm going to be presenting today. The very first one that I designed is actually on sale in an art gallery right now. I finally got some jewelry items placed on commission in an art gallery not far from my home, and I'm really excited about that. But the technique today we're going to use is just a basic modified right angle weave stitch to create these units and these link units of the bracelet. We can add our crystals in and create our clasp endings. We'll come back through and embellish the top part of the crystals on the bracelet. And then as a bonus at the end, I'm going to show you how to make these cute little charms that you can hang off of the jump rings at the end of your bracelet. Let's get started. Hi guys, so let's take a quick look at the materials that we're going to use for the bracelet. I just want to make a point out to you really quickly. At the end of this class, I'm going to show you a little bonus section on how to create these cute little charms at the end. Let's take a look at what we're going to be using today. First, you're going to need your seed beads. You'll need some size 8 O seed beads, and I'm using Toho for these. The full colors are in the class documents. And then for my 11 O's, I'm also using Toho in these gorgeous rose mauve lined luster beads. Are really pretty. This is silver lined matte transparent fern. Then we're going to use our spiky button beads. Mine are jet full capri rose. One thing I want to point out to you guys right now about your 2-hole bead or your specialty beads, before you start, I want you to make sure that you're on these spike beads that the top is not broken and that the thread will not come out. So just put your needle in and wiggle it. On our twin hole beads, which we're using today, I'm using these Vibo check glass beads. These ones are transparent amethyst capri gold. Make sure that both of the holes are open by passing your needle through each hole before you start sewing it into your project. That way you don't get the bead already sewn in and a lot of steps completed and then realize that one of your holes is blocked. So check those out. We're also going to be using the O beads. These are also check glass O beads. Mine are transparent roseland capri gold. They look like little donuts. Just like that. And these are 3.8 millimeter. Then we'll need some crystals, and I'm using 8mm crystals. And for this project, I would suggest you stay in the 8mm range. You can use other beads if you want. You do not have to use crystals, just as long as they're round and 8mm. And these are, oh, I can't remember what they are right now. They're a light transparent garnet. Sorry about that. And then for our findings, I want you to have a jump ring and a lobster claw clasp, 4 jump rings. And because we're working with those items, you're going to need some tools to create the charms at the end. Also, you're going to need some 26 gauge. You can use 22 to 26, it doesn't matter. Bare copper wire. I wouldn't use 20 gauge because it's too thick. Then you're going to use some pliers, and I want you to have handy 3 sets of pliers. I want you to have your round nose, your chain nose, and flat nose, or you can have 2 pairs of either one of these. You'll need some flush cutters. You're obviously going to need some fireline beading thread, and I recommend that you take a size 10 or thinner beading needle. I usually stick with the size 11 pony beading needles because they get me through most of my projects without any trouble. Then of course you'll need some scissors or a thread burner. Right, so that's it for the materials. Let me get myself set up and we'll come back and start our project. Alright guys, so I'm back and I've gotten my materials laid out so that we can go ahead and start our desert bloom bracelet. And I've put my needle onto, about 2 full arm spans of my beading thread. And let me slide over just a little. And I did want to let you guys know that if you have a hard time threading fire line through your beading needle, there's a pretty easy fix for that. Fire line is a braided fishing line, and it's very round. And of course, you know that the eye of your needle is not so round. And a lot of times it's really hard to thread through a beading needle. So I just take a pair of my chain nose or flat nose pliers, and I put the end in between the jaws, and I just clamp down just like that, just for a little bit. Put a little pressure. And it actually will flatten the end of your thread so that it'll pass more easily through the eye of your needle. Alright, so we're going to be doing the one needle method of a modified right angle weave stitch today. And we will not need a stop bead for this project because we're going to add our clasp at the very beginning. Now, I've got these little 2-hole brick style beads here. These are called bee bows. For purposes of today's class, I'm just going to call them 2 holes. And then I have these spiky button beads, and I'm just going to call them spikes. Alright? So let's go ahead and get started. To get started, I want you to pick up an 11-0, an 8-0, and an 11-0. Then I want you to pick up one of your 2 holes. Pick up another 11, 8, 11, and then pick up one of your spikes. Repeat that one more time. All 11, 8, 11, 2 hole, 11, 8, 11, and then one more spike. And what you should have are 4 sets of your 3 seed beads, and then 2 each of your 2 holes and spikes alternated just like this right here. And you should carry those down towards the end of your thread. And we're going to pass through my beads one more time. So I'm going to start down here at my tail thread, and I'm going to work my way all back around through these beads, and I'm going to make sure that I don't skip any. To close my loop, just take your time to make sure that you don't skip any beads. If you skip one, you're going to have a piece of exposed thread showing on your jewelry, and that's never any fun. It took me several months of learning to bead weave before I was able to get these different stitches under control to where I didn't accidentally have thread showing. Alright, so now I'm coming out right next to my tail thread here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and tie 2 overhand knots, and I'm going to make sure that my knot falls down between the first bead I added on my needle and the last bead I added on my needle. So that's an 11-0 and a spike. I'm going to do that twice. Watch where that thread knot falls down. And there I have the first little portion of one of my blooms done. But to add my clasp now, I'm coming out between that 11-0 and spike. Where I actually need to be is coming out of one of my 2-hole beads. So the spike was the last one that I went through. So I'm going to pass through from left to right. In my situation, I'm left-handed. So I'm going to move through an 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, and then through the bottom hole of my 2-hole bead. And then pull my thread all the way through. If you get a little tug, you can usually feel your knot slide up into your seed beads, which is what you'll want. Let me bring it in just a little, guys. All right. Now, I want to add my clasp, and I'm coming out of the bottom hole of that 2-hole bead. And where I need to be coming out is the top hole. So I'm coming out here to the right. I'm going to take my needle and pass it from right to left through the upper hole of that twin hole bead. Try to get my tail thread out of my way here. Alright, so now I'm going to pick up an 11-0, and I want to use a jump ring. So my jump rings here are all open out of the pack. So what I'm going to do is pick up one of my jump rings with my chain nose pliers or flat nose pliers. Then I'm going to take my pliers on the other side, and I'm just going to try to close my jump ring up because I don't want it coming off of my thread. And just keep on working at it until you get your jump ring closed. You might have to give a little bit of an outside pull because these are not the best jump rings in the wide world. Now, I've gotten my jump ring closed up nice and tight. Like that. And see, I already messed up. We might cut that part out. Let's try it again. I have a jump ring. I need to add my lobster claw to that jump ring before I close it. And that's just a typical Datrina move. I do stuff like that all the time, but luckily we need more than one jump ring for this project, so I'll use the one I already got closed on the other end. Alright, now I'm ready. So now I've gotten my little lobster claw and jump ring situated the way that I want it. I'm coming out of the top of this bead here. And what I want to do is add a seed bead to my needle. Just one 11-0 seed bead. Now I'm going to pick up one of my brick beads. I'm going to lay it just like this so I can see exactly what I'm actually going to have the way that I want my work to be. So I want this part of my 2-hole bead to be facing upwards. I want that same part of this bead to be facing upwards. So I'm coming out here to the left. I've got a seed bead on, size 11. I'm going up through that hole of my 2-hole bead. If you work much with these 2-hole beads, you'll have to pay attention to the finishes, the edging, and, you know, that kind of thing. Guys, I don't know why I keep getting out of frame here. I'm sorry. Alright, so this is what I have so far. Now I'm going to come back down through the other hole of that 2-hole bead without adding any beads to my needle. I'm going to pick up another 11-0 bead, and I'm going to come back through the other side of the 2-hole bead on my little bloom frame. Pull it all through. And that's what your beadwork should look like. I'm coming out to the left, so I'm going to pass up that seed bead and through the hole of my 2-hole bead on the left. And now I want to add my lobster claw. And I'm just going to go ahead and pick up like this. 3 11-0s. Then I'm going to pass through the jump ring of my little clasp section I created. I've got 3 11-0 seed beads. I'm going to go through here. Now I want to make sure that when I pass through here, that I'm going to have my lobster claw facing the right way. So there we go. And of course your seed beads are not going to stay on the right side of your jump ring just yet. But once you get through there, I want you to go ahead and pick up 3 more seed beads. Now I want you to come down through the other hole of your 2-hole bead. And here's where we'll situate the jump ring between the beads. So when I pull it, I want to make sure that my jump ring falls in between 3 seed beads on one side, 3 seed beads on another side. Pull nice and tight, then come back up through just your 2-hole bead and reinforce this a couple of times. So we're going to come up through the 2-hole bead, sorry guys, my thread got hung on some of my furniture here. Alright, so now I'm coming out of that 2-hole bead. I want to move up through these 3 seed beads on the same side of my bead work, where my thread is working thread is currently. I'm going to come up through those 3. Then I'm going to make sure I go through the center hole of my jump ring. Once I've done that, I'm going to make sure it doesn't get hung up on my lobster claw. But once I've went through that jump ring, I can now come down through the 3 seed beads in the 2-hole bead on the opposite side. I'm also going to come through that last seed bead there on the right hand side. I'm going to pull all my thread through. So now I know that I've been through my clasp twice. And I'm coming out of these 3 seed beads here on the right hand side of my twin hole bead. So I'm going to pass through that 2-hole bead again from right to left. And once I get all of that done, I have this cute little clasp section already added to my bracelet here. So now I'm coming out of the top hole of that 2-hole bead there. I'm going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead. And I'm going to pass through the bottom hole of that same exact bead I'm in right now. My thread's on the left, so I'm going to pass through the bead from left to right. And I know, guys, I flip my work around a lot, but this is the only way that I make sure I don't make a mistake. And you can see here that I've set this little bead up, coming right between the 2 holes of that bead. Now I got to do the same thing on the other side. So now I'm coming out of the bottom hole of that bead on the right. So I'm going to pick up my 11-0 and I'm going to go from right to left through the top hole. And this, adding these 2 beads here just covers up the exposed thread on the side of our 2-hole bead. Now we want to come down through that bead that we just added on the left, because I'm on the left. And now I want to pass back through the bottom hole one more time, from left to right. Make sure you don't get hung on your clasp. And there we go. So now I'm ready to work back downwards towards my bracelet. So I'm coming out of my twin hole bead. I don't want to pass through the bead I added on the side. I want to come through the bead that is part of the 11-0, 8-0, 11-0 segment that we added. So pass through those 3 beads. We're just positioning now. And then you could go through your spike bead. And I went also through my 11-0, but it doesn't matter because I'm moving down to my other 2-hole bead. And I come through the 8-0 and 11-0 there. And then also the bottom hole of the next 2-hole bead. We just want to come through the 2-hole bead, not the 11-0 on the other side. And I'll pull all of that through. Now, at this point, I'm going to end my tail thread because I tied knots and pulled the knot inside the beads. So I can eliminate that piece of tail thread from my situation. And actually, you guys, look here. I accidentally skipped passing through my spike bead. So that gives me a great opportunity to show you guys what to do in that situation. Pull it up just a little. Actually, what it does, I must have just gotten my thread hung around it. Was once I pulled it up, I see that I didn't skip the bead, but my thread had gotten caught on the spike bead. So now I'm just going to pull it on through, and now I don't have any exposed thread. So that's something we need to watch, is your thread catching on your other beads. All right, so here we are, and we want to add one of our crystals. And I'll show you guys how to do that. So I've got one of my crystals, and I want it to sit right here. So all I need to do, I'm coming out to the left on this bottom hole of that 2-hole bead. I'm going to pick up my crystal, and I'm going to drag it all the way down here. Now, I'm coming out to the left on that 2-hole bead. I need to come through the right bottom hole of the 2-hole bead on the opposite side. I'm going to pull my thread all the way through. And I want to sit this bead on top of my beadwork, right there. And I got one of these little crazy things in my thread, so let me fix that. Alright, now that I've gotten my crystal here, I'm going to straighten it up and get back down to the other end of my beadwork. So now my needle's coming out of the left on this 2-hole bead. I'm going to pass back through the center of my crystal. Pull it through while I hold on to my crystal. Snug it in there really good. Then I'm going to come back through this twin-hole bead. If you can see here, you'll know which side to go through. Here I have this little bit of thread showing that I came in through my crystal from the left. So now I know I need to go back through this 2-hole bead from right to left, because I want to thread my other thread on the opposite side. And don't worry if there's a little bit of exposed thread showing here on your crystals. We're going to fix that after we get our bracelet built. So let me pull this all the way through. I'll show you what everything looks like. There we go. So here is our little crystal sitting on top of this little bloom. And I've pulled everything nice and snug, but I don't want to pull so tight that I mess up the shape of my beadwork. So when I lay it down, it still looks nice and shapely. So now I'm going to add my link section. I'm coming out of to the left out of the bottom hole of that bead. So I need to go from left to right through the top hole. Oops, sorry guys. Let's back that up 1 second. While we're here, we're going to go ahead and add our little side bead like we did up here. So pick up an 11-0, then pass from left to right through the upper hole. And you put this little seed bead right there. Then we're going to pick up one more. We're going to come back through the bottom hole from right to left to put one of our 11-0s on the other side. Now to get back into position, come up through the 11-0. Pass back through just the top hole of your 2-hole bead. And this is why I said it was a modified right angle weave, because basically all of our units here of our blossoms, and including the connection we're getting ready to make, are made using the style of right angle weave. But we're also using these twin hole beads and a lot of other specialty beads, you know, to create these units, and it becomes modified because you're having to make additional moves and add additional beads. Alright, so now I'm ready to make my connection. Now for my connection, we're going to do something a little bit similar. So we're going to pick up the 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, and then this time we're going to pick up an O bead. And we'll need another 11, 8, 11, and we'll need one of our 2-hole beads. And I'm positioning that 2-hole bead the way that the side that I want up is in the right position. Alright, then we're just going to repeat. We'll pick up an 11, 8, 11 O bead, 11, 8, 11. Once we've got all that on our needle, I'm going to bring it all down so you guys can see what it looks like. So I've got all those beads on my thread. I'm coming out of the top of my twin hole bead here to the right. So now I need to pass my needle through that same twin hole, upper hole, from left to right, and pull it through to form my connection loop. And there's what I have. Now I'm going to reinforce this loop just by going through all the beads again 1.5 times. So I'm coming out to the left here. I flip my work, you guys. And I'm going to pass through all those beads there on the left. I'm going to come through the bottom hole of my twin hole bead and start working down these beads on the right. Make sure you don't skip going through that O bead. Then I just have these 3 more seed beads, and then I'm back around to the 2-hole bead on my previous unit. Come through the bottom hole of that, or the top hole of that, I'm sorry. We're working from the top hole of that one, the bottom hole of this one. So here I am. And this is what my work looks like. But now I need to move up to this twin hole so I can add another unit or bloom. So I'm going to flip my work again. It's just easier for me. I'm left-handed. I'm going to pass through the 11-0, 8-0, 11-0 O bead, 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, and my 2-hole bead. And once I've pulled that through, I'm going to step up into this upper hole here. So just pick up one of your 11-0s. Because everything we do here, we want to do on the other side. Come through the upper hole of your bead. Pick up an 11-0. Go back through just the lower hole of your 2-hole bead. Nothing else. Now I need to come up through the bead I just added on the side of my twin. My brick, my Bebo ruler. And then I'm going to go out through the upper hole. And once again, I'm going from left to right here. And there we have it. There's our little connection. And here is our unit. Alright guys, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and work on the length of my bracelet. Now I'm going to pick up for my next bloom unit, and then I'll pick up, put my crystal in, come back up, work up to the upper hole of my bead, add my my little link, and keep working in that manner. Okay, so before we can continue on, I wanted to show you really quick how to pick up the beads for your next bloom. All right, so you're coming out of your top hole here on your twin hole bead. So we'll pick up, just like we've been doing, a seed bead, an 11-0, 8-0, 11-0. Pick up a spike. For our additional units of blooms and links, we're only going to be needing to pick up one of our additional 2-hole bead in our unit, because we're going to be building off of the existing one from the previous unit. So go ahead and pick that up, 11-0, 8-0, spike, 11-0, 8-0, then your 2-hole. And I apologize, I left that out of the video, so I'm redoing it just so I can add it in for you guys. Now pick up your 11-0, 8-0, 11-0, spike, and then one more 11-0, 8-0, and 11-0. Let me just show you guys the beads. You can see here that I've only had to pick up one of my 2-hole brick beads. And when you pick up for your links, you'll do the same thing. You'll pick up 11-0, 8-0, 11-0 O bead, 11-0, 8-0, 11-0 2-hole bead. Then over here in place of the spike, you will also just use the O bead. So let's just bring that down. And here I'm coming out. Let me pull my work together here, sorry. So I'm coming out on the left hand side of my 2-hole bead, so I'll just come through from right to left through that same bead, and there I have created the base for my next bloom. And then once you've added your crystal in and reinforced and done your steps, you'll come up here, add the 2 little side beads, come out of the top hole, and pick up, as I told you, for the connection link with the O beads instead of the spikes. Okay. Guys, I just want to jump back in with a couple of quick notes here. As you're building your blossom units, make sure that you keep your work laid out in front of you occasionally to make sure that you're getting your crystals situated on the same side of your beadwork. You would not want to get down, through your whole thing and realize one of your crystals might be situated on the wrong side. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, if you were to happen to forget to put your little side beads here on your little twin bars between your blooms and your links, don't worry about it, because we can when we come back through to finish our bracelet up and embellish a little bit, we can add them then. So it's not that big of a deal if you forget a couple. Just one last thing, please do your best to make sure that you don't skip any beads or get hung up on any of your other specialty beads, and so you have exposed thread. We don't want that to happen. All right, so that's it for my tips. I've gotten 3 of my units done here and 2 of my links. I'm going to come back to you guys when I have 6 of my little blooms with the crystal in them added. And at that point, we're going to discuss bracelet length and a few other things. All right, I'll be back shortly. All right, you guys, so I'm worked on some length here of my bracelet, and I want to point out a couple of things. We started this end of our bracelet with a blossom, so we'll want to finish this end of our bracelet with the blossom. So now we're going to have to use our minds and think about how long we want the bracelet. And so for me, I wear about a 6.5-inch bracelet. So I've gotten my 5 blossoms made, and when I put it on my arm, you can see that I'm ready to add my other clasp band. Now for you, you may need to add more of your connection units and more blossoms until you get to the desired length that you need. You can note here that we've added this much additional length, starting with these 2 seed beads. Let me zoom in just a little. With these 2 seed beads, the 2-hole, the seed beads, and our clasp. So on this end, I'm going to be using the 2 seed beads, the 2-hole bead. Let me slide these in. I've got some jump rings here that I'm going to be using as well. So I would need a couple of little seed beads like I used on this end, where I put 3 on each side of my jump ring. But I'm going to see how that pans out for me. Probably I'll just go ahead and use the 3. But first of all, now that we've talked about the length and everything, let's talk about this last little closure on this end. Grab my pliers. And if you'll remember, when I first closed my jump ring up earlier, I didn't add the lobster claw, but that's okay because I need one of them to be closed right now. And I've got 2 additional jump rings. I've got the one that's closed, and then I've got this open one. So I'm going to pick up the open one with my pliers, and I'm going to put my closed one right on there, just like that. Now, I don't need anything else. I'm just going to close this jump ring up with my pliers. Then I'm going to make sure that it's all nice and closed so my thread won't come out when I stitch through it. All right, so now I'm coming out here. I'm at the bottom of this bead. And just like we've been doing, I need to add the 2 little seed beads along the side edge. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm on the left. I'm picking up an 11-0, going from left to right through my top hole. And I'm pulling my thread. I'm going to pick up one more of my seed beads. And I'm going to go right back down through the bottom hole from right to left, and make sure that I don't come through one of my the 11-0 on the other side. I just want to be coming through the 2-hole bead. and pull that bead in. Now I need to move back up to my top hole, so I'm going to go up through this bead I added just now on the left hand side, and I'm going to come right back through the top hole of this 2-hole bead. And now we're ready to work on our clasp. You'll notice that all my crystals are sitting on the same side of my beadwork. And somehow I got lucky today, and I did not manage to skip adding those little beads on the side of my little twins there. So got lucky there. All right, so now what we're going to do is just exactly what we did on the other end. We're going to pick up a seed bead. Then we're going to make sure that we get our 2-hole bead sitting the way that we want it. And I'm going to look at my bead, and this is the more rounded side here, so I want to go up through that hole here to make sure that I get the right side of my 2-hole bead sticking up, and I do. So now I just need to come back down through it in the other hole, because we're positioning this bead horizontally where all of our other ones are vertical. So now I'm here, and I need to pick up my other seed bead and come back through this one that's part of my blossom from the top, from the other side, so I'll go left to right. You pull everything through. And there I have created the same little look that I did on the other end. Now I'm going to flip my work just because that's easier for me. Now I need to come up through the seed bead and the 2-hole bead on the other side where my working thread currently is sitting. And now we're going to add our little jump ring section. So we did that by picking up 3 of our 11-ohs, going through the jump ring, one of our jump rings, then we want 3 more 11-ohs. So this is what you should have on your needle. Now we're going to come down through the opposite hole on our 2-hole bead, just like we've been doing. And we can skip the seed bead, just come through the 2-hole bead, like that. Now we're going to go back up through the other hole and go through some of our seed beads and reinforce. So I come up through the other hole of my 2-hole bead, and I made it through 1 seed bead, so I just need to go through 2 more. And then we're going to make sure we pass through our jump ring again, just like we did on the other end. And now I want to come down through the 3 11-oh seed beads and my 2-hole bead and the seed bead on this side. Now I'm going to come back through the 2-hole bead that is part of my blossom. My working thread's on the right, so I'll come through that hole right to left. This time when I pull everything nice and snug, you'll see that my connection looks really good. Now because we're not going to be working with this end of our bracelet again, I want you to go ahead and reinforce this whole section one more time, because your clasp end of your bracelet is always going to take the most wear and tear. So come up through. I'm on the left. I want to come up through the seed bead, the 2-hole bead, and the 3 seed beads that are on the left side. Then I want to pull my thread. Now I need to make sure that I go through my jump ring, and I'm coming down through the exact same beads that are on the right. So I want to make sure I get through all 3 of these 11-ohs, my 2-hole bead, and then the 11-oh on the right. And when you pull your thread, make sure it doesn't get hung on your jump rings. And there's what we have. Now, I'm kind of looking at it like this. I see a little bit of exposed thread right here. I can fix that really easily. I'm coming out of that seed bead. So I can just pick up an 11/0 seed bead. And instead of going through my 2-hole bead, I'm going to go right through that one I positioned on the side, on the right. Excuse me. I'm having earthquakes. And then I'm going to pull that bead into position like this. And it covers that thread. But now I've got to do the same thing over here. So now I'm coming out of my middle seed bead I added to this ruler or bibo. So I'm going to come through the bottom hole of that bead, closest to my blossom crystal, from right to left, following my thread path. And when I come out here on the left, I need to go up through the seed bead that's on the left side of my 2-hole bead. And now I could pick up my other 11/0 and just go straight up through the seed bead. And this time I'll want to go through that 2-hole bead here in my clasp section. So 1 11/0 and the 2-hole on your clasp section. Now that I'm here, I can just go right back down through the 2-hole bead, because that little thread that'll show on this bead here is going to be covered really well by your other seed beads and jump rings. It won't be noticeable. So come through the 2-hole, and then we're going to move through the seed bead. So I'm coming through the 2-hole and the first seed bead, just because that's the way my needle was getting through there easy enough. And now I need to comb through one more time these 2 seed beads on the side. On the right side. Alright, so now here I am back at the part of this 2-hole bead that's closest to my little blossom. So I'm going to just flip my work over. And I'm still just coming out of that seed bead right here. The best thing for me to do is to pass through my twin hole bead one more time. Because I flipped my work, now I'm going to be working across the top of my bracelet. I'll go left to right because my thread was on the left. And get that all pulled into position. And I accidentally hung up on my jump ring. Let me pull it through. There we go. Alright. So once you get your bracelet length figured out, and you've ended with a blossom, then you've created your clasp end as a mirror image of your other clasp end. Come back and we'll go ahead and we'll work on the embellishing across the top of our bracelet.